Throughout my life, I've always dealt with this constant assumption that people don't like me. If I felt like any of my insecurities came out, such as being too boring or being too awkward or being too shy or maybe even oversharing, being too much, if any of those insecurities came out, and if I noticed any slight gesture in someone that they weren't 100% happy with me, my mind would roll with it and be like, yeah, that person doesn't like me. And recently I was having a quality conversation with one of my really good friends, and we were just opening up about things like that. And she asked me, well, why do you think people don't like you? Where do you think that stems from? Well, it's just the common reasons, like I'm too awkward or I'm too this or I'm too that, just the common things that come up when you experience social anxiety. Don't you feel that way too? And she said to me, well, it's not necessarily that I always assume people don't like me. I more so assume that people just forget about me. And I was like, wow. My takeaway from that conversation was really that we all project our own fears and insecurities onto each interaction, although everyone's may be different. Everyone has their own personal fear that they're projecting. So although you may perceive a friendship or an interaction or a situation in a particular way, that person is likely perceiving it in an entirely different way based off of their own projections. And neither one of your projections are really the reality of the situation. You're just seeing it from your own lens. We all have a trigger. Whether we think we're too much for people, not enough for people, weak, too feminine, too masculine, too extra, too boring, the list goes on. It sort of shattered my own belief because I realized it was just a projection of my deeper insecurities, one of many that we all hold. Not that this concept is new to me because this is just typical stuff that we talk about on this channel, but I guess that particular conversation just made me see things in a little bit of a different way, because sometimes it just takes hearing another person's unique perspective to see something in a different way. And the thing is, we all have deep insecurities that we are projecting onto relationships. So this video is in no way making anyone feel like it's wrong to do so. I mean, you really can't help it. This video is more so geared to give you a sense of relief that everyone is struggling in their own ways and likely not even judging you the way that you really think that they are. Everyone just seems to kind of be judging themselves and projecting that onto their relationships and thinking that the other person is judging them in that same way, but they're often not. And of course, people may realize certain little flaws that you have here and there, but think about how when you view another person, you see that flaw for what it is, but if you love that person, that flaw really doesn't bother you that much. You don't even think about it much because you're too busy thinking about your own flaws, right? So when we go into relationships and interactions with this projection, we are basically creating, writing, and playing out this certain story in our heads that things are this certain way, that we are this certain way. But it's likely that the person on the other side is also writing, creating, and acting out their own version of the story that's likely very different from yours. A good example of this is the fact that I was too busy thinking that she probably didn't like me as much as I liked her because of this, and this, so I didn't really reach out to her very much. But it's likely that when I didn't reach out to her very much, her own projection of the situation came out, thinking that people often forget about her, and that's how she saw it. I also told her that one of the reasons why I felt like maybe she didn't like me as much is because I overshare too much, and that maybe I'm a little bit immature because I'm younger than her. And her response to that was that she wishes that she shared more because she rarely opens up, and that at times she actually felt like I was more mature than her. So these are just really good examples of how we're constantly projecting our own insecurities and playing out this story that we have created in our minds that is actually creating these situations, when if we were just present in the moment with this person and not getting so stuck in our heads about those things, the relationship might be entirely different in a better way. So moral of the story is, when you notice that you are projecting a fear or an insecurity, try to be more in the moment with that person. Focusing on that fear or insecurity only manifests it into actuality, and we saw how that happens with some of the examples that I showed. And maybe you can think about a time in your life when you did that yourself, when you held some sort of limiting belief about yourself, and the more you focused on that belief or insecurity, the more it actually manifested into reality. Because instead of being present in the moment, you were so hyper-focused on this insecurity, which only caused it to grow. When we're just present with people instead, not having any expectations or judgments, the relationship naturally deepens and becomes better. Realize that everyone is usually projecting some deep-rooted fear or insecurity they have, but it is that very belief that is causing the story to unfold. But Sierra, I know this person doesn't like me. I know that for a fact. It's not just a projection. Yeah, some people are actually going to dislike you. There are certain people in my life that I can tell that I'm definitely not their vibe, and I've already accepted that. I mean, there's a reason why these things happen. When you're not someone's vibe, that typically means that they're not your vibe either, and there's a reason why things unfolded that way. When you learn to love and accept yourself for exactly as you are, you can more easily accept when others don't like you. Yes, it's still sort of an unpleasant feeling knowing that someone doesn't like you, especially when they think something about you that isn't true. I've definitely experienced that before, and it's not a great feeling, but that's just life. And how we can relieve that feeling is by knowing and accepting and loving ourselves for exactly who we are, and practicing acceptance and knowing that as long as I like who I am, I'm happy. And usually I feel like when someone doesn't like you for whatever reason, as time passes and you just focus on yourself, that person just completely forgets about the situation because they're just doing life, they're just doing them. And yeah, that's just the cycle of life, right? Sometimes people don't like you and we move on from it. But more often than not, that's just a story that you are creating. And that person is creating their own story, and neither one are the reality of the situation. So how can we stop projecting our insecurities, or at least do it less often? I could go in depth about redirecting negative thoughts to positive ones and reprogramming the mind, but that's a whole nother topic for a whole nother day. I honestly just want to end this video by giving you a very simple piece of advice. Just a practical piece of advice, because I'm not trying to do this whole checklist of things for you to work on and to overwhelm you, because self-love and self-acceptance is an entire journey, and it takes time and practice to learn to love and accept yourself and to stop projecting your fears and insecurities so much. So I think the most practical thing that you can start doing right now in relationships is to try your very best to be more present in the moment with people. In every relationship and friendship that you have, and in every little interaction that you have. Because it's only when we get in our heads that we start having all of these toxic thoughts that manipulate the situation. And that's also when the worst parts of us come out, is when we are acting and talking from a place of insecurity and from fear. It's in those times that we do overshare, or that we do get really quiet, or that we don't express ourselves enough because we're so in our head about the situation. The best thing that you can always do is, and I know it's not easy, but like I said, it takes time and practice, is to absolutely always try to be the most present that you can be in every interaction. Just focusing on that person and what that person is saying and the environment that you're in. And if that's really difficult, I know it's pretty difficult for me, to be honest with you, make being more present in the moment your number one goal in life right now, because that is the answer to most of our troubles in life. And I think a lot of people know that, but it's easily forgotten in each moment. So I'm here to give you a reminder. I know for me, I have a lot of goals and passions and interests, but my life's work really is to be more present to my life. As someone who has experienced pretty crippling depression and anxiety pretty much my whole life, I know that becoming a more present person is the best thing that I can do for myself. I promise you, if you actively stayed present in conversations and in relationships, then those fears and insecurities in your mind would no longer be narrating your story with that person. Thank you so much for joining me today. I'm so glad to be sitting here filming again. I spent the last month pretty busy and just not having much time to do my favorite thing ever, which is creating content. So I'm glad to be back. I have a lot of videos coming. I have a lot of ideas. If you resonated with this video, give it a like, subscribe to my channel. I would love to have you a part of my safe space community. Let me know if you would be interested in a podcast, possibly. I'm thinking about doing that. But other than that, I really hope that I see you in the next video.